Hi, this is Soft Cell Electrical and I'm your host John. In this lesson we close out 12 basic electrical formulas. This is the third ohm formula, which is watts divided by amps squared is equal to ohms. We're going to use this formula to figure out if the heating unit is good or bad on an electric clothes dryer, but we're going to throw you a curve as well. We've taken out the heating coil on the dryer and there's no watt rating on it, but in the back of the dryer there is a label. On that label there'll be all sorts of stuff like serial number, cycles per second, but the most important thing is your actual amperage and your running wattage. Your actual amperage is 22.4 amps and your running wattage is 5400. You might notice three other readings. The voltage is 208 to 240, which is nominal. The RMA, which is 30 amps, is considered the recommended minimum amperage. That is the size of the breaker that goes in. The surge wattage is the amount of wattage that's used when the dryer first kicks on. We don't need to worry about that. We're just concerned with the actual amperage and the running wattage. The curveball I was talking about is the electric motor. We need to deduct watts and the amps from the motor out of the entire formula to make the ohms reading correct on the heating element. Taking a closer look at that dryer motor, we see that it's 1/3 or 0.33 horsepower continuous load. That means you can run it all day long without any danger of overloading it. It's also rated at 208 to 240 volts and 60 cycles. The only thing we really care about is the 0.33 horsepower. Now, I'm not going to get real detailed on converting horsepower. I will just come right out and say that it's 1.03 amps, which is also 456.67 watts. What we do next, we deduct those figures from the total ohm figures on the dryer, and that will give us the total ohm reading on the heater cage. Let's take a closer look at the factors we're dealing with. We have a 1/3 horsepower motor, which is 1.03 amps. We deduct that from 22.4 amps on the dryer rating. That leaves us with 21.37 amps. Moving on to watts, we have a total wattage of 5400 watts subtracted from 247.2 watts, and that leaves us with 5152.8 element watts. Now we just take that and plug it into the formula, taking the adjusted numbers of 5152.8 watts and dividing it by 21.37 amps squared, which is 466.67 amps, we come up with a total of 11.28 ohms for the entire heating unit. However, there are 5 elements. Now, we could just test for ohms on the entire heating unit, and if they were like 13 or 14, we'd know the unit was bad. However, we're going to learn a little more in this lesson and teach you how to check each individual unit. Using Ohm's law, you know that the total amount of ohms in a parallel circuit is equal to the total amount of ohms divided by the combined number of resistors, or in this case, coils. Inversely, we can get the individual ohms by multiplying the number of coils by the total resistance, as shown in the diagram before you. What we're looking at is the total amount of ohms multiplied by the number of coils is equal to the ohms of each individual coil. So, the entire unit with all 5 coils comes to 11.28 ohms multiplied by 5, and we get a total ohms or resistance of 56.4. Let's take a closer look at that heating element. Optimal readings for all 5 coils would be 56.41 ohms apiece. This could vary a little bit, but not by much. Now, the optimal reading for all 5 coils combined would be 11.28 ohms. So our optimal readings would be 56.41 per coil, or 11.28 for all 5 coils combined. However, When we tested it, we only got one unit that read 56.41. The others had extremely low ohms, 4, 3, 5, and 3, which means they're almost a completely live circuit. Using Ohm's law, we come up with an actual ohm reading combination of 40.41. This varies greatly from 11.28. Like I said before, lower ohm readings sometimes are not that bad, but when you get a variation that's extreme on either side, it's definitely not good. The readings on this shows that the heating element is clearly no good. Now here's some practical advice. Even if you can get independent coils and swap them out yourself, I strongly recommend against it. Better to buy the complete unit in its entirety. The reason for this is because it will have a warranty then. In addition to that, trying to replace coils in a clothes dryer heater is something like trying to hang slinkies from your awnings on a 2-story house, multiplied by 5. Just don't do it. Well, that wraps up the entire series of 12 basic electrical formulas. I hope you've enjoyed them. From here, we're going to move on to electrical theory and perhaps tackle some even tougher subjects. I'd like to thank you for watching and remind you to stay tuned for future tutorials. They're always free, and don't forget, have a great day.